voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Unemployment rate at the lowest level since 1969. But man, you hear our friends, you hear the Republicans saying the economy, end of society, the economy's collapsing, the recession's here, Armageddon is around the corner. The U.S. added 517,000 jobs in January. I saw no indication that was coming. There were no expectations. The lowest level, 3.4. Now, I know my conservative friends have all day today saying, yeah, but. No, but. This is the measure we've been using all along. And look, workforce participation in total numbers is actually down, but it's because old people retiring. We now have more jobs being created than we have available people, which is interesting because, again, what conservatives want you to believe is everyone's lazy, no one's working, and they're all still on the government teat. That's the frame. I still, even to this day, I get this from people. That's because Joe Biden gave that $1,400 2 years ago. Now, the numbers are going around. The Twitters were a Twitter with the Biden boom hashtag. In 2 years, 12.1 million jobs added during his term. Say what you want. Things are roaring back. 800,000 of those in manufacturing. So we're in a moment where the U.S. economy added 517,000 jobs, unemployment rates at a 54-year low, manufacturing's coming back in a huge way. All indications, things looking pretty good. 6 straight months of inflation falling, gas prices down $1.50 from its peak. Things you would think we as Americans would go, you know what, we're getting there, heading in the right direction. We must be doing something right. No, can't have that. Because the outrage party, doing what they do. Now, the weird thing is someone sent me this statistic, and it is true that, Democrats, deliver in job creation. They went back, over the last several presidents, 4 Republicans, 3 Democrats. And, during all of those years, the average job growth per month is a huge difference. In fact, the average, how did it go? The average job creation since 1933 with Democrats in the White House as opposed to Republicans. When Democrats are in the White House, the average is about 175,000 jobs per month being created. And that's a good thing because as population expands, you need to be able to create those jobs just to stay even. When Republicans are in our office, that number is down to 67,000, which means you're losing jobs, which means things are getting worse, which means contracting. And it comes back to the ideas. And this is, again, another one of these moments. The ideology. It comes back to the ideology. And I have people say, well, you're a tax and spend liberal. I go, yeah, I believe in taxing very wealthy people to invest in the things that we need. Yeah, I'll wear that badge with pride. If it means we get better roads and we get better bridges, we get better infrastructure, we get education for our children, we get health care for our citizens. If we get the things we need, yeah. Taxing and spending is how the economy goes. And when Democrats are in office, they do that. They invest. When Republicans are in office, it's all about tightening the belt, squeeze the belt on working people. And again, it's who gets screwed in these environments. Back to my high school government teacher. Who gets what? Government decides who gets what. When Democrats are in office, the money flows and helps the working people. When Republicans are in office, it's all about taking from working people and giving to the very wealthy. It's that simple. Doesn't get any easier than that. And that has played out time and time again. But here we are in this moment. Unemployment is at a in my lifetime, a record low. Wages are ticking up, not nearly fast enough. And that has everything to do with our labor laws. It has everything to do with the fact that it's harder to join and form unions right now. It's harder to get that first contract. Societally, we're divided and pitted against each other. And there's all of these gimmicks, all of these schemes, all these games out there. For instance, I happen to be paying attention to the Money Watch website today. And the good folks over at Money Watch, they had an article that caught my attention just because the headline grabbed my attention, as it's supposed to. You know, they need the clickbait, and they got me. Companies save billions of dollars by giving employees fake manager titles, study shows. And I'm going, they save billions of dollars? Save? I don't know that save is the right word. Screw their workers out of? Yeah, I'd go with that. Cheat them out of? Sure, absolutely. Steal? Yeah, right in line with that. But save? Now, this isn't new. This story, not really new, but there's a study that just came out from researchers from Texas University and Harvard Business School that went and looked at some data from some databases from these online sources and looked at the jobs that were being posted. Burning Glass Technologies, they put up their information, jobs between 2010 and 2018, and came up with some quite interesting little bits. What we already know. During that period, instead of giving people raises, we gave them titles. They weren't front desk clerks. They were directors of first impression. They weren't barbers or they were grooming managers. You know, it's like the janitor at school. He's a sanitation engineer. You know, the maintenance engineer. No, he's the garbage man, sanitation engineer. No, he's garbage man. The truck driver, logistics specialist. We give them these great titles, but with it comes management status. And this is one of those things that, I've had happen to me in my life. I was in a long-term relationship, and I'll never. This is one of those stories that you knew the relationship was over. And I almost fell into this trap. I've always worked in the less than truckload trucking industry. I've always worked hourly wage job. I've always had good wages, good benefits, thanks to my union. But there was a point where this person's like, you should go and try this other job, which would have been a dock supervisor for a less than truckload company, but a supervisor. So I went for the interview, and I went through all this process, and they offered me the job because I'm wonderful. And then they told me what it entailed, and it entailed working 4 days on, 3 days off, 13-hour days, no overtime. And then, having to cover specific shifts. And there was a whole bunch of other stuff to where it worked out to where you were working like 55 hours a week in the grand scheme of things for like 40 hours worth of pay. And I turned it down. I said, no, I can't do that. The math doesn't add up. Economically, it doesn't make any sense that I'm going to make less money doing a job that would just give me a cute little title. And when I went back to this person I was in a long-term relationship with and said, yeah, they offered it, and I turned it down, lost her mind. And the line that I'll never forget that came out of her mouth was, after I explained the economics of it, going, bills, car payments, mortgage, savings, that takes money. Working for free doesn't make sense. The line was, but you'll be management. And they go, what? But you'll be management. And it came back to this embarrassment of work. And this is a couple of decades ago. That kind of embarrassment of actual work is something that's been kind of ingrained in us. And I don't know how or why, but it's one of these things where you go, but the math doesn't add up. And this is what corporations take advantage of. this company was willing to offer me this job to get me to work, more hours, longer hours, more difficult, time frames, weekends, all kinds of stuff. With the allure being, but you'd be management. Now imagine, now you're a low-wage worker. You're working at a fast food restaurant. You're working at, a department store. You're working at a number of these places, and you're getting beat up. You're struggling to make ends meet. You haven't done very well. You're struggling, and they offer you this reward. You're management. You're somebody. But the catch is you're not going to make any more money. The catch is now you're going to work 100 hours a week for, at the time this study was done, the cutoff was $23,660, which is about $455 a week, which is, not even a little over $11 an hour. Now you say, you work 100 hours a week, you're making $455 a week. That's well below the minimum wage, but that's legal because you're management. You're exempt from the overtime laws. And when they did this study, and this is the interesting part of this, when they did this study and they checked all of these, all of the salary requirements, all of the salary postings listed under the managerial titles from 2010 to 2018, what they found is the largest spike was the $455 to $480 a week rate, and by a lot, by double of the next. And why is that? Well, because they know what the threshold was. They know where they have to put the bottom line to be able to cheat you out of wages. Now they're saying, look, during this period, per year, workers got cheated out of about $4 billion in overtime a year. Now stop and think about this. If you're making $23,660 a year and having this inflated title costs you what they said, their number, 13% lower wages than you would have earned otherwise. That's a substantial sum of money. That's like almost $3,000 more in your pocket, $3,000 that the company saved, cheated you out of, that didn't go into supporting your family. Now, if you remember, we talked about this extensively during the Obama years because the push at the end of the Obama term was to raise that 23,660 up to 47 something, where it should have remained from the 70s had it kept up with inflation. The Trump era, they took it to 35. So even now, still, you're looking at, what about a little over $15 an hour, and you can work unlimited numbers of hours and be exempt from most labor laws because you're now management. And it's that allure of now you're somebody. I'm management. That's how they've gotten us. And my thought in this, and I go back to the relationship that I had years ago where, that came up. The embarrassment of somebody who works for a living, that wasn't how it always was in this country. And it shouldn't be. People should have pride in the work that they do. They should be respected for the work that they do. There should be dignity in the work that they do. And dignity comes in the form of being able to support oneself with decent wages, decent benefits, job security. The kind of thing that I say every worker should have a contract for, things out in writing. Every CEO's got one. Why shouldn't every worker have one? So I just found it interesting. I think it's ironic that now we hear from the right screaming and hollering, nobody wants to work anymore, because nobody wants to work these crummy restaurant jobs, which, with unemployment being as low as it is, the restaurant industry is having a really hard time. They're having an incredibly hard time getting people to go back to work for poor wages, terrible working conditions. I mean, we as customers, a lot of us are terrible. I look at, we've gone out a couple of times and you see the treatment of the wait staff and of the restaurants. It's deplorable. I wouldn't want to take those jobs, and I'm not surprised that people haven't gone back to them. And what the pandemic did And this is a failure on the part of the the restaurant association and all of those companies who just shunned their workers, sent them out into the cold during the pandemic. People didn't come back. Had they done what I said from the beginning, which was keep people attached to their jobs, get some kind of like the airline industry did, keep them attached to their job, get their health care from the same thing, get their wages, same thing, their pensions, everything sort of normal through that period. Keep them attached to that job. So when things ramp back up, because we knew they would at some point, you would want to bring them back. You didn't do that. You treated them like garbage. You threw them to the curb, told them, tough, you're on your own. And they looked somewhere else. And is it a surprise that they haven't come back? Is it a shock? No, not at all. Now, here's the other part of this. People are still leaving jobs because, according to the most recent data coming out, people who leave jobs get a much higher raise than people who stay in jobs. The most recent number, if you leave a job, the increase that they saw was like 7.7%. If you stayed, it was like 5.5%. So people who are chasing those extra dollars are making more money. So the incentive is to leave. And this has been something I've been talking about for years. Corporate America doesn't care about their workers. Corporate America doesn't care about you or me. You're just a negative on a balance sheet. It's how cheap they can get you in the door, how cheaply they can hold you by holding on to health insurance over your head so that you don't leave. And what the pandemic did is it kind of shook things up a little bit and said, oh, I don't have a choice. Now it's time to look somewhere else. Well, you know what? People aren't going back to the restaurant industry, into the hospitality industry, as they call it. And why? Because they've got other options now, which is why the hospitality industry, they claim, is 500,000 workers short right now. But are you really surprised by it? And the answer is no. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Got lots to get to today. Going to take your calls throughout the show. Quick break, right back.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Shell has reported its highest profits in 115 years. 115 years. They posted a $39.9 billion profit. Now that's still not as much as Exxon, who pocketed $55.7 billion. And you go, gee, I wonder why inflation's high. I wonder why we're being gouged. I wonder. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on line 1. Alice, how are we doing today?
Oh, we're hanging in there.
What's on your mind?
So, you were talking about making the managerial positions in the hospitality industry. Okay, so first of all, let me state, I am a college graduate. Yay, yippee. Several degrees, but who cares? I worked for McCopco, which is the McDonald's Corporation. I was a swing manager. And the way that they do this is they tried to get me, we want you to become a certified whatever, And they're like, it's 45 hours a week, and you get this. And I said, no, thank you. But they had, and this is what they do. And like the assistant managers and the store managers, they have to work. They only get a salaried position. At the time, I was working for McCopco, and I quit in 2011. It was the assistant managers were making $649 a week, but they were required to work something around 60 hours a week.
Wow.
So I can tell you it is a big thing in the hospitality industry. It's what they do. And I had absolutely no desire to, be used and abused. And as for your previous relationship, and she apparently had a problem with men who work, I actually like myself good old country boys that know how to fix things. My first husband didn't know how to do anything like that. So to each their own. But have a good evening,
There
Rick.
you go. Appreciate it, Alice. Let's go to line 3. We got Deborah on line 3. Deborah, how are we doing this evening?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for your passion in helping, especially the working class. Thank you. Out of Chicago, for a half a century, there has been a move towards displacing black people, which means workers, the professionals, the union workers, school teachers, and others. My question is, if there are so many jobs that are unfilled, why can't there be an effort to find out specifically, and with the unsheltered, what is it that you want to do? And find them, direct them to career choices that they would enjoy. For the first time, that you would have people that would engage in work that's probably open that could be filled.
No, I agree with you. The problem is that there isn't a shortage of workers. There's a shortage of workers who are going to work for crummy wages.
Absolutely. So what I'm saying is, if we can find out what a person wishes to do, we can place them in that rather than them not doing anything.
I agree with
you.
And
having unfilled jobs.
Yep. And that's where I've always said that if the private sector won't do it, the public sector has to.
Is there something that the president can push for? Because President Obama, he did have a bill on jobs, and they killed it. They wouldn't allow him to do anything with jobs even when he was the president.
No, it's the same scenario now. Republicans hate working people, and that's where it comes back to voting and who we put into office. I got to take a break here, Deborah. I appreciate the thoughts, though. Please call back again real soon.
Thank you.
God, I hate the bottom of the hour breaks. I hate having to take the breaks, but got to do it. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1908. That was the day the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on the Lowe versus Lawler case, also known as the Danbury Hatters case. In 1902, the United Hatters of North America attempted to organize the fur hat company, D.E. Lowe & Company. Lowe refused to meet with the union. The union struck and called for a nationwide boycott of Lowe hats. The AFL assisted in popularizing the boycott. They worked to convince retailers and customers not to buy from Lowe. The company sued the union's business agent and hundreds of its members. Lowe claimed the union violated the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 by interfering with interstate commerce. The Sherman Act had been designed to control big business monopolies, trusts, and cartels like the Standard Oil Company. An 1893 case, United States versus Workingmen's Amalgamated Council of New Orleans, established that the Sherman Act applied to labor unions as well. In the Danbury Hatters case, the Supreme Court ruled that the union combined to restrain trade or commerce among several states. The union countered by arguing that the union did not interfere with the transportation of hats and were not themselves engaged in interstate commerce. But the union lost. In addition to violating the Sherman Act, the court argued that individual union members could be held personally liable for damages incurred by their unions. The union was eventually held liable in damages amounting to $235,000. The AFL pushed back, demanding reforms in the Sherman Act. Partial reforms came with the Clayton Antitrust Act of 1914, but it would be another 20 years before the Norris-LaGuardia Act would exempt organized labor from antitrust injunctions. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
An old political saying notes that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. However, given the proliferation of today's goofball culture wars and fanatical right-wing phobias, that truism should be updated to say evil swarms when power-hungry leaders unleash the crazies. Which brings us to the U.S. House of Representatives, now led by a run-of-the-mill corporate Republican, Kevin McCarthy. He's always been a crassly ambitious political climber, untethered to any moral principle larger than his own ego. So he's not trusted, even by GOP lawmakers. Indeed, in an almost comical public spectacle, it took 4 days and 15 rounds of voting in January before Kevin could cut enough desperate deals to get the slimmest majority of his own Republican colleagues to make him Speaker of the House. To squeak out his win, though, he had to hand big chunks of his official power to a gaggle of extremist, far-right-wing legislators who are, in a word, bonkers. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, and other members of the GOP's Kooky Caucus promote unhinged QAnon conspiracy theories, warn that Jews are firing lasers from outer space to start wildfires, lionize Vladimir Putin and Adolf Hitler, call for the execution of Democratic leaders, and insist that the government is staging school shootings as an excuse to outlaw guns. Okay, they're nuts, and politics makes strange bedfellows. But McCarthy has not just climbed into bed with them. He's snuggling up tightly, naming them to powerful committees, publicly legitimizing their screwballism, and intentionally bringing the evil of bigotry, intolerance, and even fascism in from the fringe of politics to sit in the seat of power. This is Jim Hightower saying, this is shameful, and it's dangerous. Evil swarms when so-called leaders meekly give permission for crazies to use the government power to rule over us.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, really good jobs report today. I mean, honestly, 517,000 jobs, lowest unemployment rate of my lifetime. 800,000 manufacturing jobs over the last 2 years. We're bringing manufacturing back. Inflation's coming down. Gas prices going down. Everything heading in the right direction. So what do we need? Distraction. The Chinese balloon. There's a Chinese balloon that's been floating around, and all of the right-wingers losing their minds. And this is where Marjorie Trainwreck Green and her space laser may have come in. And I've had a bunch of people say, we should be shooting that down. And I got to tell you, there's part of me that goes, yeah, probably. I may have thought about it. But there's probably a lot more to than just, we're going to shoot down the balloon. And here to share some thoughts on maybe if this is a big deal. I've asked my good friend Fred Wellman to come talk with us. He's the co-founder of the Beer Hall Project, also a political consultant and former senior advisor over at the Lincoln Project. Fred, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, great to be back, Rick. How are you, my friend?
So giant Chinese balloon.
It flew over my house, man. I actually got pictures of it today in Missouri.
So they're spying on you. Are you not
Yeah.
concerned that they're spying on you?
Oh my God, I'm horrified. The idea that someone could fly something overhead and take pictures of us is just shocking. Wait a minute. You know, it is it's ridiculous. I mean, like I said at the top, it was a really good jobs report, like you said, right? And they have to distract. I think Eric Schmidt, our Missouri senator, tweeted 9 times today about the balloon. Even our idiot state senators and state representatives in Missouri are talking about one idiot state senator sent a letter to the governor urging him to shoot it down with the National Guard. It just the stupidity of it, and the fact that look, the one thing I've learned over the years is every time they're all talking about the same thing, they were told to, and every time they're all talking about the same thing, it's to distract from something else, and it was a really good jobs report. The economy's booming. Their big show, and that the House committees is a big joke. Great. The Chinese provide an excuse to give them, obviously we're weak on China, which is what every American's stressed out about right now, is being weak or tough on China and the balloon. It is your classic bait, smoke and mirrors, distract. Don't look over here, look over there.
My favorite statement, a guy, told me that if he lived out in Montana, he'd shoot it down himself.
I mean, the thing was at 100,000 feet at one point. I think it came down. I think when we saw it over here in Missouri, it was like 60,000. That's the high end for most of your aircraft, right? I mean, we could, sending our jets up there to shoot it down would be actually hard. We have plenty of aircraft that could do it, but again, what's the point? I mean, it's an international incident, and they'll probably do something with it. Even I was kind of like thinking they should shoot something down. And I said something earlier to a colleague of mine. I was like, I'm an old Army spokesman. I was a spokesman for the Pentagon for a while, or for some famous generals. And it just goes to show again how I love the military, but they try to stay out of politics. But by trying to stay out of politics, all they do is create political problems. And, and they're standing there saying, oh, yeah, we know it's a spy balloon, but we're not going to shoot it down. It would be safe. It's like, you're just feeding it. Biden being who Biden is, he's deferring to the military in their decision making, and he's getting his ass handed to him for it. And so it is very frustrating situation. But
I mean, if I'm sitting in that seat, I'm going to shoot it down.
Right.
But now you're going to cause an international incident, because understand, by shooting it down,
right,
they're going to shoot ours down.
Right. That's the thing. It is, people forget there's a tit for tat here that goes, this isn't just a game, right? This isn't just who's the big tough guy. Can go back in history. If I studied the shooting down of the U-2, right? Gary Chambers, or Gary Powers, excuse me, Francis Gary Powers getting shot down over Russia in the U-2. There's implications to this that occur. There's second and third order effects go into making these decisions. Is there really a threat from a Chinese balloon? No. It's nothing they can't gather with their satellites, and I'm sure we'll find out what this was all about and what they were looking to gain. The funniest part is seeing guys trying to say, I think Schmidt tweeted out that it was hovering over Missouri's military installations. All right, look. A helium balloon at 100,000 feet isn't hovering over anything. It's flying on the damn jet stream. It's going pretty fast. I mean, the thing flew across the entire country in about a day. So it's just the ridiculousness of it all it's just comical. But again, it gives them a show to divert our attention. It gives them a show to divert our attention and show Biden's week after getting just an explosive jobs report, explosive economic reports, and of course we had the State of the Union on Tuesday. So now they're going to spend the next week. They're going to spend the next few days just talking about how weak we are on China.
No, and this is where you can't have an actual conversation about it being there, and as you said, it's not something they could have already gotten from their satellites.
Right.
It's this kind of reactionary response to this stuff, simply to drum up anger and to drum up division and to keep us pitted against each other, to make Biden look weak, which is why, again, there's part of me that goes, I probably would have shot it down just for that purpose. Maybe I would have borrowed Marjorie Trainwreck Green's, Jewish space laser.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you shoot it down, then you box it up and return it to them, right? It's like, well, yeah, and we could justify the shoot down, Rick. I mean, it is a safety hazard to flight. It was lowering at one point. Pilots were reporting that was within 10,000 feet of their aircraft, which is pretty close actually in air terms. So again, I think there really is a case you could have made. That was an aircraft safety issue, and we shot down for the safety of our airspace, not necessarily international incident. I think. I'm the same way. I mean, I don't know why the decision was made. My gut tells me the Pentagon did what the Pentagon does best, which is be cautious and hold their cards close. and Biden does what he does best, which is defer to the generals and show respect for traditions and norms, and decided to, well, that's what they want to do, and nobody's thinking the political implications again.
Now, here's the other part. Here's the funny part of this as well. The same people who are hair on fire, talking about let's shoot this down and cause an international incident, are the very people who are saying we shouldn't be doing anything in Ukraine. We should be using diplomacy.
Right.
Do you find that interesting that they can use both thoughts?
Oh, I find it stupid, and I mean, look, we have to be honest. These guys are, look. I had Greg Sargent from the Washington Post on my podcast yesterday, and we were laughing about the fact that the Republicans have had their hypocrisy genes removed. Trying to accuse the Republicans of being shameless or being hypocrisy is a waste of time. They don't care. They're going to talk out of both sides of their mouths all day long, and they're completely unabashed about it, and they're shameless. I mean, somebody pointed out again, my new Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt. Everybody's joking that he was complaining with the Chinese satellite flying over the farmland that he sold to China, which is a true story. He's the one that signed the law allowing them to buy land, and it had previously been illegal. So half our land's owned by China now. It is the irony and the silliness of it all is all about scoring the political points. And you saw it this week on the House, the committees, right?
Yep.
They don't actually want to legislate. Marjorie Taylor Greene, we've got to bring her up. She got all of her clips about attacking them about CRT and the $5.1 billion at one elementary school. But you know what she did? She ducked out of that committee. She only spent 5 minutes in committee. She only came in to say her piece and get her video clip, and then she ducked out. That's it. She's not there to legislate. They're not there to do anything for the good of the American people. They're there to get their clips, get their TV, get their hit, and that's what they're doing. I mean, it is,
and that's what that whole display over denouncing socialism and all of that nonsense was. That's all that was an exercise in, hey, look at me. And to get that one clip that McCarthy could go out there and say Democrats are for socialism without actually defining what socialism is, and talking about what exactly they mean. There's no enforcement mechanism. There was nothing there, no substance whatsoever, other than the performative display of, hey, look at me, I need attention.
Yeah, and the thing is, we talk a lot about reaching across the aisle and getting. The Republicans have figured out something that I don't think, frankly, between you and I, and hopefully no one else is listening, the Democrats keep thinking, and people on our side of the aisle keep thinking we need to appeal to Republicans and we need to appeal to independents. But for years now, and I think this situation with the balloon is a perfect example in the socialism. The Republicans figured out all they got to do is keep the red meat flowing to their own supporters and turn them out.
Yep.
They've figured out that the turnout game is the most important thing. It's not convincing independents. It's not convincing Democrats are trying to actually help. There's absolutely no value in bipartisanship. What they have to do is keep the red meat flowing to the Fox News, OAN, Newsmax audiences. And that's what they're doing. That's what today is. The whole balloon thing is nothing more than keeping their ferocious crowds and their angry followers angry, right?
Their daily dose of outrage candy. Absolutely.
Yeah, their outrage candy. Tim Miller's book is great. If you know Tim Miller from the Bulwark, his book is Why We Did It. And he talks about his experience with the Republican Party. And he has a great piece, if you ever read that book. He was on my show too. And I did a book thing with him. And he talks about really smartly about how the dopamine effect, how the right-wing radiosphere, which we talked about earlier before we went on the air, starting with Rush Limbaugh, is they figured out that you just got to keep that anger machine rolling, and it leads to dollars, and it leads to more. And that's what McCarthy's doing. That's what Marjorie Taylor Greene, that's what she lives for. That's what all these fools today talking about the Chinese balloon and how we're weak on China. Hawley's whole thing with China. They've figured out that as long as they can keep their masses angry and confused and not focused on the fact that their jobs are going away, that they're getting nothing from their government, that their schools are going to 4-day weeks like they are here in Missouri, that their schools are rated 48th in the country. It doesn't matter. As long as they're angry at the right people, they won't notice their lives are effing miserable.
Yeah,
right?
as long as we're drinking libtard tears.
There you go. Got to own the libs. As long as I'm owning libs, as long as you all hate the same people together, everything's fine. And it's a sad statement that it works. It is working. There's just no way. I was a senior advisor for Marcus Files in Georgia 14. Margie Taylor Greene won handily, barely campaigned, and the end is because there's a whole lot of people who just love being angry. Yeah. And I met him. I knocked doors, and I remember this specifically. One lady was like, "Oh, Margie Taylor Greene, she's my girl." I'm like, "Why? What's she done for you?" "Oh, she makes people crazy." I'm like, "Oh, that's exactly what you need in your elected representative. Are they doing anything for you?" It doesn't matter. Just they hate the people that I hate, and those people hate them. Good enough for me. Yep. And so,
no, I was in Georgia too. I heard the exact same thing when we were down there working for the Warnock runoff. It was the exact same frame.
Right. Be angry, stay angry.
No, but here's the thing, and you talked about trying to unite people, and I've been talking about this all week. I want to unite people. I want people to come together, but I also understand that you're never going to get some, and you've got to leave them behind. The fives you let go. At this point, if you're on the Marjorie Three Names bandwagon, we're never reaching you. It's time to find people who want to move this country forward and do so, and you may just have to leave them behind.
That's it. And I think for me, one of the things I'm very focused on in my work and the work like I said, I'll be announcing here in the next couple of weeks, some new work we're doing, is it is time for us to understand that what we have to do is energize our voters. We have to care about our voters. I did a little rant to my podcast this week about that someone tweeted out about how we need to stop supporting. This is your sign. We need to stop donating to races we consistently lose by 30 points. No. That's nothing more than saying that those of you who live in red places, those of you who are stuck in districts that have been gerrymandered to hell and gone, we're just going to forget about you. But oh, by the way, don't forget to vote for us every 4 years for president.
But come on, Fred. There's something to be said about you're going to spend $100 million on a campaign you're never going to win. You fight in those districts, but you use those resources better.
Well, Rick, you're talking about you act like there's a limited amount of resources. I think what you're talking about, harnessing small donors and ensuring we don't leave no one behind. In this last cycle, Rick, 23 House Republicans ran unopposed, and only 6 Democrats run unopposed. 109 of the races, the Democratic candidates only raised an average of $61,000. That's less than a city council race in a major city. That's all they raised, and they got no support. There are many ways to harness small dollar donors, and I'm excited about something I'm doing on that line to help these folks. But we can't keep telling small dollar donors they're stupid for being passionate about our democracy. We can't keep telling people that we're going to ignore them. I understand that the party has to make decisions and the big PACs have to make decisions about where their money goes. But then to basically tell those 23 districts, by the way, represent 17.5 million Americans. We're basically telling 17.5 million Americans that you don't matter. There's a lot of ways to support candidates that go beyond just straight up money. But you know what? The DCCC dropped $8 million on the Cuellar race in Texas. $8 million on a single congressional seat. So please, I don't buy for one damn second that there's a limited amount of money that could even help a little bit. You understand? A little bit for so many of these candidates. When you're averaging $61,000 for 109 races, but one race attracted $8 million from the DCCC. I'm sorry, I don't buy it.
No, I'm with you. I
don't buy there's limited funds.
I'm with you on this to the
limited vision.
I'm with you to the degree that we need to be funding these all of these races and get people in. My point is you look at someone like McGrath in Kentucky. You weren't winning that. How much?
But see, that's a Senate race, Rick. I mean, I think what you're doing, I think you're confusing the differences too. And there was a great conversation. A colleague of mine a friend of mine and I had a conversation today about this. How that we do have a problem in the Democratic cycle, and where folks from, especially the big donors from out of states, we're talking big donors here, out of the Senate states, they fall in love with a candidate who has no chance of winning the race they're in. We do have to empower the candidates who are running their races. We have to let candidates run the races they need to run in the states and the districts and the cities they live in, and let the voters choose and give them a chance to prove themselves in those districts. And it may not be somebody that somebody in New York or LA loves, but if they love them in Kentucky or they love them elsewhere, I think I always get that one thrown in my face, the Amy McGrath race or the Jamie Harrison race, or of course my race, Marcus's Flowers. But those are not, again, we still have to fight. We always want to use those examples of the 100 million races or the 60 million races. But again, we have to remember those are such outliers. The real issue is no one else is supporting them. No one fought MAGA. Not one single third-party organization ran an ad against Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm telling you right now, not a single PAC, not the DNC, not the DCCC, not one outside organization ran a single ad against the worst of the MAGA crowd, right?
Look, Fred.
And we have to fight.
Yeah, here's the thing.
Fight for democracy.
We are on the same page here, Fred. We are absolutely on the same page. As someone who lives in a rural area, has Scott, pardon me, Perry as my congressman, who had a challenger who raised almost no money and had a chance of winning had they put a little bit of resource into her.
A little bit. I mean, that's the punchline, Rick.
We are not on different pages here.
You know, there's actually a study done by our colleagues and some friends of mine at the organization called It Starts Today, now Every State Blue. And Every State Blue had Washington University do a study for them. It wasn't Washington, doesn't matter. Anyways, they had a study done. And it's shown that it's about, there's a certain amount of money, but your average congressional race to be competitive is about $200,000 minimum.
Yep.
$200,000 minimum. We're not talking millions. We're not talking 8 million or 6 million. We're talking 200 grand, and you can empower a candidate to hire good people, to run ads, do those things they need to run a competitive campaign and put up a good fight. And by the way, you and I know money makes more money. So 200 grand will actually make more money. The interesting thing about the study we're doing right now is while 109 races only race an average of 61,000, you know what the next tier up was in races? 2 million. Okay. I mean, talk about has and has nots, right?
No, this tells me something different, though. This tells me that again, my frame of Democrats, if there's a street fight, will offer to hold your coat. They won't go into places where there's a fight, and this has been the knock against Democrats for a very long time. They won't go into those places and fight, whereas Republican money will absolutely go into a Democratic stronghold, just if for no other reason than to be the fly in the ointment. Democrats haven't done that. So if you're working to do that, I'm 100% behind you.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to talk. I mean, the thing is, we got to fight. You get it. And the thing we found with the Marcus Flowers campaign specifically was, and I used to get the emails, Rick. I mean, I was the comms director for the general election, in addition to being senior advisor. And what really amazed me was people would just look, I don't know if you're going to win. I don't think you're going to win. It's okay. I live in a very blue district in X state. I want to make a difference. I want to fight this person. Marjorie Taylor Greene should have competition.
Sure.
And for me, that's what it comes down to, is that I believe there are, that campaign was fueled by nothing but small donors, nothing. Like even most of our donors didn't even max out. We ran not a single fundraiser outside of Georgia. We didn't go to Hollywood. We didn't go to LA, not one fundraiser. Marcus stayed in Georgia. We raised all the money through small dollar donors. It's possible to do that. It's possible to fight these people because look, Marjorie Taylor Greene did not want to go back to Georgia. Hell, her husband left her in the middle of the campaign because she's dating a guy from RSBN. She wanted to go to Trump rallies with her boyfriend. That's all she wanted to do. But we made her come home and campaign. Heck, she had to fly in from out of state to do our debate. She showed up pissed off because we were inconveniencing her from her high-flying life to make her come back to Georgia and actually debate her opponent.
Right.
We need to stand up to these people. And what I saw was, going back to what you mentioned, is our donors, our supporters, the hundreds of thousands, and literally with 100,000 of them, they just wanted to see somebody fight. And there's this hunger among the Democratic general electorate. There's a hunger amongst Democratic base to fight, not kumbaya. They want to see a fight. They want us to take it to them. And so you're seeing, that's why I think people are excited seeing Hakeem Jeffries and these others. That's why AOC has been placed on the oversight committee as number 2. The number 2 Democrat on the oversight committee is now Alexander Ocasio-Cortez. There's a reason for that. We need to fight these guys. And
there's no question about that.
Yeah.
I've been screaming about this since the 90s. This is not new. None of this stuff is new, time, man.
Right? Well, we're going to get at it. So
I mean, Gingrich, the thing you can give Gingrich credit for is Gingrich did this for the Republicans back in the 90s. We're not Magellan. We're not discovering new lands. We're not reinventing the wheel. We know how to do this stuff. There is a path. You just have to get in there and roll up your sleeves, ball up your little digits, and throw a couple.
There you go. I agree. Well, I'm not afraid to do that. I mean, yeah, my bio. I was a soldier for 22 years. I went to war 4 times. I was in the Lincoln Project, who I don't know were kind of famous for not actually shying from a fight. I'm not one to avoid taking up the mantle and charging to the flames, charging to the war. So I'm very excited. I think hopefully we could do some cool stuff, but we get it. And I think there's enough of us coming together finally to actually do something about it.
No, it's about time. It's about time.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, I want to get your thoughts. Tuesday's going to be the State of the Union, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Any thoughts on what we might see out of the president? I'm sure the job numbers are going to come up a time or two. I'm sure the manufacturing jobs that have been created, 800,000 of them, I'm sure that's going to come up a time or two, maybe something on infrastructure. Any other thoughts?
Ukraine, Ukraine has been, I hope he frames Ukraine the way he should. That has been a giant success. That what Mr. Biden and his team have done has united NATO. They've energized Europe. They've brought together a coalition of fractious countries that in many ways were hardly working together at all. Had allowed 20 years of the war in the Middle East to distract them from their core purpose, which is defending Europe from Russia. It's a huge success. It's a foreign policy success, and the fact that Ukraine exists as a country is because that Joe Biden stepped up and led a coalition of our allies to support this country fighting for their freedom and their democracy. So I hope he takes that mantle and runs with it, because he's earned it. And all those naysayers are saying otherwise are fools. I assure you, Ukraine knows who their friends are and what they're doing for them. And so I believe that'll be a big part of it. And I do believe he'll take, I can't imagine a scenario. He's been very forthright talking about the threats to our democracy. So I can't imagine he's not going to take it to them and talk about the stupidity and the threats to our democracy and the movement of the extreme, what he calls the ultra MAGA, the MAGA movement that is undermining our freedom. And then I hope he does talk about these actions across the country, the tons and tons of laws targeting transgender youth, the targeting of freedom of speech in Florida, the banning of books. I'm very hopeful that he'll bring that up and take a stand for our country as the president, fighting for our actual Constitution, and fighting for those who are being assaulted across the country as Republicans use their bigotry as making that actual law. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I think it'll be a good. He's got a lot to crow about, and that as much as we want, is Mr. Biden perfect? Obviously we all agree that no one is, but it's hard to deny that he's had a very successful 2 years. In most every measure. It's certainly not perfect, but we are leaps and bounds above where we were 2 years ago under the monster Trump and his idiotic and incompetent administration that bumbled their way through the COVID crisis and bumbled their way into a failure in Afghanistan. So I'm hopeful we'll hear Joe Biden take credit for the good things that his administration was able to pull off in 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, as you said. The fact that this past month, 517,000 jobs. I was expecting that in no way, shape, or form. An unemployment rate lower than any point in my lifetime. Manufacturing coming back, investing in infrastructure. There is so much positive, and yet all we keep hearing from the right-wing outrage machine is, outrage. Division.
Too many. Well, I think the media and the general media is doing too much of appeasing their outrage and their lies, and they're treating their arguments as sane arguments, as reasonable arguments. They're not, and they act like touting the success of the administration is somehow it being too nice and too fair, and we don't want them to call us liberals. Look, the facts are the facts, right? The country is in a much better place economically and than it has been in decades. Certainly not coming out of a COVID crisis. We're not in recession. Everybody said that we're going to be in recession by now. It should be. Hell, we should be. We should be. No,
as hard as they're trying.
Global pandemic, then we should be. I mean, nobody would fault somebody for going into recession after a global pandemic.
Yeah.
That's what the economists said would be normal. And somehow this administration is keeping us out of it in a million ways, and there's just no denying that. So we can't give in to them. I mean, look, I'm not. I'm certainly, me. I'm not in hyperbole. I'm not a cheerleader for the administration in any way. But the facts are the facts. We would be in a very, very bad place if we were in the second Trump administration right now.
I'm right there with you, Fred. I appreciate the time as always. Good stuff, my friend. Look forward to talking to you again.
Look forward to it too.
Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show.
is the biggest annual profit for any U.S. or European oil company ever.
Big Oil posts all-time high record profits. Biden hits the road to promote infrastructure upgrades. Plus,
no company will ever be able to stick a mine on top of some of the best salmon habitat in the world.
EPA vetoes the controversial proposed Pebble mine in Alaska.
For real this time?
For real this time.
All of those stories, and we'll see all of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
What's Exxon doing with all of that money?
Well, a lot of it is going back to shareholders. And that means big paydays for investment firms and for executives. But, it's not just Wall Street. Exxon is a very popular stock for retirement accounts.
Well, they certainly do sound excited about those record profits over there at NPR. Guess they don't call them National Petroleum Radio for nothing. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I know it's stunning to hear about the record profits at the big oil companies, but first, let's take a look at some of the damage they're causing, shall we?
Yes, a grim assessment. The people of Earth saw 42 weather disasters in 2022 that caused more than $1 billion in damage each. That is according to a new analysis by global insurance company Gallagher Re. Those $42 billion weather disasters included 3 mega disasters costing more than $20 billion each in 2022. Hurricane Ian in the U.S. and drought in the U.S. and Europe. Plus, a record heat wave killed more than 40,000 people across Europe. The total damage wrought globally by weather disasters in 2022 was $360 billion. The researchers found the fingerprints of climate change on virtually every major disaster.
Yeah, but did you hear? ExxonMobil had their largest profits ever.
Yep, oil giant ExxonMobil posted record annual profits for 2022, even as Americans struggled to afford gasoline, home heating, food, and consumer goods. Exxon alone made $56 billion in net profit in 2022. That's more than $6 million an hour, an all-time high, not just for the company, but for the entire Western oil industry, thanks to Russia's war on Ukraine straining fossil energy supplies.
So when the prices for gas went through the roof over the past year, it wasn't because they were having difficulty finding supply. It was because they were increasing their prices to get to these record profits.
Exactly. In a press conference, Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island highlighted his bill to levy a windfall profit tax on oil companies like the European Union has done. And Whitehouse called out the oil industry's propaganda campaign that falsely blamed the Biden administration for high energy prices while the industry was gleefully taking advantage of war profiteering and price gouging. And Senator Whitehouse added this.
When you're looking at how to fund the $11 billion international loss and damage pledge that Joe Biden made, you might want to think about the $200 billion that the fossil fuel industry just extracted in excess profits. They are not stepping up to make good in international loss and damage for the harm that they cause. They have to be held accountable.
Did you think they'd step up, Senator Whitehouse? Did you really?
In other news, President Biden was on the road this week to highlight long-awaited infrastructure repairs and upgrades thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law. On Monday in Baltimore, he announced the expansion of a 150-year-old rail tunnel that was damaged by extreme flooding during Hurricane Sandy, which will create 20,000 construction jobs and reduce car traffic and air pollution. Biden also traveled to New York to announce $300 million in funding to complete the first phase of the Hudson River Tunnel project, which was abandoned mid-construction by the Trump administration. And finally, over the past week, we've reported on the Biden administration protecting Alaska's Tongass National Forest from logging and the pristine watershed of Minnesota's Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness from mining pollution. Now, the Biden Environmental Protection Agency has effectively vetoed the controversial proposed Pebble mine in Alaska. Using a rare authority under the Clean Water Act, the agency banned the dumping of mine waste in the watershed of Alaska's Bristol Bay, concluding it would permanently destroy 100 miles of streams and wetlands and pose an unacceptable threat to the world's most prolific salmon fishery. It is a huge victory for Native American tribes and Alaska's sustainable billion-dollar commercial fishing and outdoor recreation industries. As one tribal advocate said, quote, "You can have a mine for 50 years or salmon for 1,000 years. You cannot have both."
Very good news up north. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this is one of those stories that almost like a bad movie. You may remember the 90s movie. It was called The Rainmaker with Matt Damon and Sally Fields. About a mother and the son who was sick. I think the kid had leukemia or something. And the insurance company that just denied them every bit of care that they needed, and it was the constant game of deny care until the kid finally died. And for me, the movie, the only thing I remember is one of the people from the insurance company wrote to the mother and said, "We've denied your claim all these times. You must be stupid to keep fighting this." And you go, it's a bad movie from the 90s. Who would see that today? Well, this is, according to this NPR report, 2021 bad movie. Evidently, the way this story goes is Penn State University and United Healthcare, the big giant conglomerate United Healthcare, entered into an agreement to cover the students at Penn State with health insurance, which is a lucrative gig. You got a lot of young people, not going to need a lot of insurance, not going to need a lot of health care, going to pay premiums. All that's going to be there, but not a lot of outlays. But evidently this one student had what is in the article, what they say is a crippling case of ulcerative colitis. Which, as I'm reading through this, bloody diarrhea, incredible numbing fatigue, life-threatening blood clots, just you can do, evidently, reading through the article, kid could do nothing. In fact, he was experiencing bloody diarrhea 20 times a day. His stomach pains such that he couldn't get off the couch, curled up in a fetal position for days at a time. I mean, this is someone who, and understand, this kid was, a starting, guard on the basketball team at Penn State. He was, 6'4", healthy, and then he's diagnosed with this ulcerative colitis. And, went to a couple of doctors and they tried to figure this out. Finally, they go to the Mayo Clinic and they get, this cocktail of drugs, as it's described in the article, that costs nearly $2 million a year. I mean, this kid's care is costing this insurance company $2 million a year. And what's next? All of the stuff that goes into denying this family and this kid the care that they're supposed to get because they're insured. This is the reason you have insurance. You have insurance so that if bad things happen to you, you get the care that you need. Now, thanks to the Affordable Care Act, this is one of those little weird things that, that dreaded Obamacare. Most insurances pre-Affordable Care Act capped at $1 million. Evidently, this guy's drug regime was nearly $2 million a year. His medical bills were like $2 million a year. So he'd have been cut off a long time ago, pre-Affordable Care Act. Now, the family's like, screw this. We're going to fight. The interesting thing is when they fought, They went and they were able to discover a whole bunch of records, a whole bunch of recordings of phone calls of people like this nurse that they talk about who called the account manager saying, well, they canceled it. And the guy laughing, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. Her saying, yeah, me too. Like it was some kind of joke. And it was almost like a movie scene, like a bad movie scene, that you've got these two people who could give a rat's behind about this kid who is struggling and suffering and because it's not them. What do they care about? The family, fights through this. Even this nurse goes, I can't believe she's going to do this. I can't believe they're going to pursue this. Because the reality is we as Americans, we complain a lot. We're good at complaining. Oh my God, are we good at complaining? But following through and actually doing something about our complaints, not so much. In fact, one research study showed that of all of this is amazing to me, of all of the complaining, of all of the things that happen with fighting with insurance companies, Americans only file formal appeals in 1% of the denied claims. 1%. So the fact that this family is like, oh, wait a second, our doctors are saying that it's medically necessary that this kid gets this medication, that gets this treatment. Your quack doctor is saying it's not. We're gonna fight this. So when they went and they got all this information, because the great thing about civil trials is discovery, which is why when people say, I'm going to sue you, they never do, because there's a discovery process. And you have to turn over information. What they found is that this United Healthcare was doctor shopping. They actually had records that they were able to get that showed doctors saying, no, you can't stop this kid's medications. It's going to be detrimental to his health. They buried that. No, can't have that. That's bad for our denial rate. And they took the quack doctors, well, it's not necessary, so that they could deny this kid the care that he needs. Now, look, this is one case. One case. Can you imagine, the scale of if only 1% of us are filing appeals on these? Because most Americans just take it. You can't fight City Hall. You can't fight these big corporations. And good on these people. Because the reality is what we know, again, what the studies show us, is 1 in 7 claims are denied. 1 in 7 claims are denied, not medically necessary. I keep coming back to this moment where you go, when do we dump these for-profit insurers? When do we dump these big companies? How did they get so much power? Now, we've heard stories of the past, and again, none of this stuff is new. What's new here is that there's actually audio recordings of these people having some of the most vile conversations, joking about this kid's life and how they were able to deny this kid care. We know that there were hit squads in the past that would, if you got cancer, they would comb through your past to try and find some little thing, some way to weasel out of your policy so that they could deny you care. Oh, well, you walked by a building that had asbestos in it 25 years ago. You didn't put that on the application. You got mesothelioma. I'm sorry, we can't cover you. And you go, this is why I hate insurance companies. Because again, the reality is they're not in business to pay claims. They're not in business. They didn't get that account at Penn State because they thought, oh, gee, I'm going to make sure that we get the best health care for those kids. No, they did it because, hey, there's a lot of cash to be made. There's a lot of easy, low-hanging fruit. These are young people who aren't going to use a lot of insurance. They may break an arm every now and again, but hey, that's no big deal. And the thing that's frustrating and angering to me here is that, again, you come back to these companies are making such obscene amounts of money. And their goal? Deny you, deny me, deny us the care we need. I mean, it's disgraceful to me. And only because this one family decided, hey, we're going to fight this. We're going to fight this as far and as hard as we can. We're going to spend what we have to make sure that this happens. I mean, it's mind-blowing. And, I come back to, because I've known people who have had long-term illnesses. And the last thing you want to have to do while you're trying to struggle to get better is to fight with an appeals process or fight with an insurance company. Most people are just going to go, well, I'm just going to have to suffer or figure out how to do without. This, while we had that performative display in Congress yesterday about, well, you can't have socialism. This is what capitalism gets us. Because it's all about the money. There's the good PR, there's the, we care. They don't. They care about the bottom line. And the sad reality is you go through this, again, this is one story of one person who their life was turned upside down. Finally found some relief only to have it yanked away. And why? Again, back to the profits. Love to hear your thoughts. If you've got a story like this, healthcare horror story, I'd love to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Because I look at this and we've put so much power into the hands of these big corporations. And for what? Now, I've had people tell me, well, Medicare. No, Medicare what? The privatized plans, the ones that we're spending all this money on, that they're doing this denying people care. They're denying seniors care. They're doing everything that they can do to be just like they are these big companies. What am I talking about? And you go, isn't there something we can do? Yeah, there is. We can start locking people up for doing this stuff. But we never do. We never seem to go after the white collar criminals. I go back to that Rainmaker movie where the kid died. The kid ultimately died because they denied him the treatment that a doctor of his said it was something that could have prolonged his life. And nobody went to jail. There was a little slap on the fine. They paid a little bit of money. There was that. But I think, if we start going after some of these people, start locking some of these people up, maybe decency might return. I mean, I'm listening to the phone clips, and I couldn't help but be just repulsed that someone would think that way. I got to be honest. If I had to get a job, that my job was to go, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know you've got this horrible ailment. I know that this is the only thing that gets you relief. I know this is the only thing that gets you functional, but hey, it just costs too much money for the company, and we're going to have to cut you off. You're going to have to go back to dumping out blood 20 times a day in fetal position on the couch. Sorry, that's your reality because it's going to cost us too much. Yeah, I know you paid your premiums, but my bonus depends on it. I don't know that I take that job. And I don't know that there's... Actually, I do. I know. I don't take that job. What is it about a segment of the population that would do that to someone? It seems like a loss of humanity. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a quick call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Back after this.
Phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Here's some fun news. Former Vice President Mike Pence back in the news. He may be going to run for president here in 2024, but he's calling for Social Security reform. Yeah, it's high on the list. He wants to institute. Here's an original idea. You ready for it? Private saving accounts for Social Security. Yeah. We're back to this crap again. Private. You can get your own plan. Going to get your own Social Security savings account. You might, and look, if you listen to Ted Cruz, you can take money out of it to pay for maternity leave, so you'll have nothing at the end. Understand what Social Security was meant to be. It was never meant to be a retirement program. It wasn't meant to be your main retirement. It wasn't meant to be a savings vehicle. It was an anti-poverty program. It was to say that, you know what? Seniors in this country are never going to fall below a threshold, a minimum line. We're not going to make people eat cat food. We're going to ensure that in old age you're not going to be destitute, being warehoused in an old age home or a debtor's prison, if you will. It seems my Republican friends are hell-bent on returning us to those days. Look, they want to return us to the good old days of the 80s and 90s. We know that. Not the 1980s and 90s, mind you, but they want to return us to those days where if you're hungry, desperate, poverty wages, desperation, but if you're old and you can't afford to live, well, we're going to move on from you. And this is kind of one of these moments where you go, I'm struggling with the direction that the Republicans want to take us. His quote is, there are modest reforms and entitlements. Again, your Social Security and Medicare that you paid for, they still view as entitlements that can be done without disadvantaging anybody at this point of the need. He said, I think the day could come when we could replace the New Deal with a better deal. Literally give younger Americans the ability to take a portion of their Social Security withholdings and put it into a private savings account. Oh, this was a bad idea. When it came up during the Bush years, it's a bad idea now. But you know what? You know what Pence is thinking? Pence is thinking we've all got amnesia, and we forgot 2008. Pence is thinking that they're dumb. Americans are stupid. They're not going to remember that collapse that wiped away a huge part of our retirements. And had we put Social Security into it, it would have made things so much worse. Because understand, we can't go in and bail out Social Security by printing money. Remember this, because Social Security can't add to the deficit by law, which is interesting because we've got Republicans who are saying, no, we've got to hold Social Security and Medicare hostage to do something about the debt that Social Security and Medicare have nothing to do with. Again, you figure it out. I can't. It's just where we are. But I wanted to let you know the bad ideas are still out there. They never go away. They're just going to repackage it, put it in a new bumper sticker slogan, and this is where we're going to go. So expect that coming down the road. This is how they're going to get Gen Z. This is the thinking. This is how they're going to go after and encourage Gen Z to vote for them. I don't think it's going to work. Because I think you're going to have a hard time getting past all the homophobia and the misogyny and the racism and all that. But, hey, they're going to try. And I guess on a certain level, you got to possibly give them something of I don't know, a little bit. Personally, I think get your hands off of Social Security. Get your hands off of Medicare. Do not let them touch this. I had someone ask me, well, what would be the big deal? We try a new program. We try something different. The problem is once you try that, you never can return to the system that has been working. That's the problem. They're never going to let you go back. Once they kill it, they're not going to revive it. Once they've figured out how to stop it from breathing, you can bet that there'll never be another breath breathed into those lungs. Because their goal has always been to keep working people desperate. Why? Cheap labor. I mean, that at the end of it has been the mantra of the Republican Party for decades. It's the whole conservative movement. Crush workers' abilities to make better wages, hours, conditions. Crush their ability to use government to improve conditions for families. Create desperation for those people. And you can put whoever you want into that category. Hooray for the handful and the you-know-what with everybody else. And this is, again, like I said, they want to take us back to the 80s and 90s. They want to take us back to those days where, workers had no rights, where consumers were at the mercy of whomever, and the robber barons ruled the roost. And what's amazing to me is we keep falling for it. I was talking with Fred Wellman a minute ago about unity, this idea that as a country, there are things we should be united around. There are things that we should be able to come, but it's not going to happen. Because there's a segment of this population that is addicted to the outrage, addicted to, I'm just going to make everyone as miserable as I am. I mean, I look at the news that's coming out, and there are some really good news. The economy seems to be moving in the right direction. Would I like to see wages going higher? Absolutely. If we had a stronger labor movement, if we had a much higher union density, those wages would be going up. People are working on that. And we should be working on that. But everything seems to be moving in a good direction. If we had a Fed that wasn't trying to kill everything off and a Republican Party that wasn't trying to hold the world hostage, maybe we would be moving faster toward the right places. But if you watch some of the hearings and you watch some of the speeches from the House floor, you would think that the country is burning to the ground, that around every corner, families are being ripped apart, and there are people. The world view from my Republican friends is very twisted, and it's troubling to me because I want to get things done. There's so much we need to do, and to have a broken political system only benefits one group of people. And those are the people who are doing wildly well. The folks at the top are 1%ers. So when you see Marjorie, 3 names, and you see Bobo, and you see Louis Gohmert, and you see the rest of them doing their song and dance and playing their political theater, it's all about the bread and circus. It's all about continuing that outrage. And when do we stop? I mean, that's for me. When do we stop this? When do we get off the train? When do we turn the channel on the outrage and go, you know what? Yeah, okay, fine. You're upset about something, but what have you done? I had a couple of people emailing me, go, Rick, you said something the other day made me think a little differently. You're right. If we want people to have children, maybe we should have an environment that we want them to want to bring into. Maybe jobs, maybe healthcare, maybe education. How come we're not doing any of that? And that's a darn good question. How come there is no legislation to do that? How come we don't have public works programs for people who can't find jobs when the private sector won't create them? Now look, we've got flush jobs. The people who are crying that they can't find workers are the ones who are paying poverty wages. This is where you go the free market, right? Pay better wages, you'll get better people. But no, we're going to go, they're lazy. Interesting world we're in. Got a lot more to get to. Want to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1971. That was a day of tragedy for the workers at the Thiokol Chemical Corporation plant in southeastern Georgia. An explosion killed 27 workers and injured dozens more. Explosive material meant for the Vietnam War had instead detonated in Georgia. In the early 1960s, NASA had contracted with the company to build solid rocket motors for the space program. Thiokol acquired 7,400 acres of land at Horse Pen Bluff, an isolated area of land that used to be a plantation. The company built a large 36-building complex. As orders from the space program waned, the company shifted its production to pesticides and munitions. One item they produced was trip flares for use in the Vietnam War. A trip flare is employed by a military operation to secure an area. A flare is connected to a tripwire and ignites if it is triggered. The highly flammable magnesium is a key ingredient to the flares. A fire started in one of the buildings of the plant. The employees were able to evacuate quickly, but they did not leave the area, not realizing the danger of a potential explosion. When the blast came, it could be felt as far as 50 miles away. Some of the victims were hurled 400 feet in the air. An investigation found that explosive materials had been improperly labeled and that the company's fire protection system was woefully inadequate, contributing to the loss of life. After a drawn-out legal battle, victims of the disaster won a federal lawsuit against the company for their negligence. The Vietnam War had taken an unexpected toll on the working people who gave their lives, making trip flares for the battlefront. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
An old political saying notes that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. However, given the proliferation of today's goofball culture wars and fanatical right-wing phobias, that truism should be updated to say evil swarms when power-hungry leaders unleash the crazies. Which brings us to the U.S. House of Representatives, now led by a run-of-the-mill corporate Republican, Kevin McCarthy. He's always been a crassly ambitious political climber, untethered to any moral principle larger than his own ego. So he's not trusted, even by GOP lawmakers. Indeed, in an almost comical public spectacle, it took 4 days and 15 rounds of voting in January before Kevin could cut enough desperate deals to get the slimmest majority of his own Republican colleagues to make him Speaker of the House. To squeak out his win, though, he had to hand big chunks of his official power to a gaggle of extremist, far-right-wing legislators who are, in a word, bonkers. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, and other members of the GOP's Kooky Caucus promote unhinged QAnon conspiracy theories, warn that Jews are firing lasers from outer space to start wildfires, lionize Vladimir Putin and Adolf Hitler, call for the execution of Democratic leaders, and insist that the government is staging school shootings as an excuse to outlaw guns. Okay, they're nuts, and politics makes strange bedfellows. But McCarthy has not just climbed into bed with them. He's snuggling up tightly, naming them to powerful committees, publicly legitimizing their screwballism, and intentionally bringing the evil of bigotry, intolerance, and even fascism in from the fringe of politics to sit in the seat of power. This is Jim Hightower saying, this is shameful, and it's dangerous. Evil swarms when so-called leaders meekly give permission for crazies to use the government power to rule over us.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, interesting report over at the Daily Beast. They're reporting that, because, hey, they voted Ilhan Omar off of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and it's been reported that Republican Representative Ken Buck has commented and said it's the stupidest vote in the world, that they just took the stupidest vote in the world. And Representative Mike Simpson from Idaho, he said, yeah, this could make her a martyr. And you go, you think? Maybe you should have thought of that before. Oh, I don't know. You did it. Now, anybody surprised that they threw her off? No. How can you be surprised? Again, I go back to this. It was a bad idea when Democrats threw off the idiots that they threw off. It's a bad idea here. But the martyr thing, I think there's something here. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day, our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So what do you think? Are they going to make a martyr out of her?
No, I don't. I don't think it'll go to martyr status. I don't think that Marjorie Taylor Greene or Gosar, maybe internally it went to a semi-martyr status within the caucuses. I think amongst the general public it doesn't. And I think, and let me say this correctly, but of all the people that could be removed from a committee, there'll be more reaction about Schiff being removed than there will be Omar amongst the public.
So they got their 3. The Democrats did 2. Is this the end of it, or is this something we see going forward? Is this something that continues to come up, do you think?
I believe, and I believed at the time, having served 11 years with Nancy Pelosi and, knowing her style and her leadership style, I don't believe that she really wanted to do what they did at that time. There was a lot of pressure, tight votes. It stirred a lot of emotion, so she yielded to it. I think probably McCarthy wouldn't really want to do this, but again, I don't think there were much options. So it's the Old Testament eye for eye. I didn't think it was good when the Democrats did it, and I don't think it's good when the Republicans did it. Now they've both done it.
So that's the question. Now they've got it out of their system. Is this end here? Do we go, okay, you got yours, I got mine, we stop?
Well, here's the danger of this. Then it becomes the speech police. Look, I mean, there's some things that to pick out one party each here. Marjorie Taylor Greene said some things I think were just absolutely outrageous and obnoxious and white supremacist, etc. And I think that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar said some things I really just don't care for. And I'm putting myself back in Congress for a second. Does that mean at that time, if I was there, that I should say, oh, they go, and then somebody else says something I really don't like, and it's, a little bit, bad or off color or whatever, oh, we got to get them too. So I think it's a dangerous path to start down. I really do. And, people are elected by their constituencies, and a couple of people that have opened their mouths right and left had close elections last time. We know that from Bobert. So I think sometimes nature takes its course, but this is precedent setting on both parties, and I think down the road it's going to be, well, why don't you get that one? How come you don't get that one? Why is Marjorie Taylor Greene back on the committee when she said things about, Jewish laser beams and things?
No, I was against it from the beginning. I thought it was a bad idea.
Same here.
And I still think it's a bad idea. Look, because I keep coming back to, you saw Marjorie, 3 names, do her little spiel. She walks into a committee room for 3 minutes, gets her FaceTime, and then bolts. But in that 3-minute FaceTime, she got her clicks, saying that, hey, that elementary school in Illinois is getting $5 billion to teach that theory about race that's critical.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff we're in. Want to get your thoughts on the. Since you brought up the space lasers, evidently we got a giant balloon floating above the center part of the U.S.
Well, I read the articles. I'm all for shooting it down personally. I know we have to be careful. I understand that. I believe it is a spy balloon, and I'll also tell you a little tidbit. When I chaired House Administration, I was in charge of the security of the Capitol and our technology systems. We had defense-level computer systems with, protection at defense level. And our CEO would send me a message just about once a week at least, and he would say the Chinese are trying to hack the congressional computers, or the Iranians, mainly Chinese or Iranians, not even the Russians at the time. And I would send protests to the Chinese embassy, and their answer, which one time they actually physically came over to my office, but their answer was always, these are teenagers. It has nothing to do with us. They're teenagers.
Right.
If you believe that, then we believe this is a weather balloon. I think the president made the right choice in holding Blinken off from going right now. It's not good. It's like an in-your-face thing. Here's this balloon, and all of a sudden, if we send our Secretary of State right over, it's just not a good, public policy look to it. So they made the right move there. I'd like to see, if it goes over a stretch of land that nothing could be harmed, I'd love to see them shoot it down personally.
I mean, my initial reaction was shoot it down, but then my second reaction, as I sat and I thought about it, going, what are they getting? It's not anything that they couldn't get from their satellites. Mm-hmm. If you shoot it down, now you've created an incident that they're going to start shooting ours down, because if you don't think that we've got spy planes
we do it.
And stuff going over their territory, it seems like this could be that ramp up moment.
Right.
This is where diplomacy could play in. And I find it ironic that the very people who are screaming about, we should be shot it down before it came into our airspace, are the same ones saying we should do nothing in Ukraine because, well, we should be using diplomacy. It just seems odd to me.
Right. But here it is, and it's circulating around. But I thought that myself, what's it really gathering? It can't be gathered by something else.
Yeah, I mean, they've got satellites. Trust me, they've mapped out every square inch of this country already.
I think this is just a Chinese way of in your face.
Yep.
And like I said, they did it with our congressional computers, trying to hack into them. We knew it was them. We had ways to detect it. And their response was laughable.
Now, but here's the thing that gets here's the important part for me, and this should be a unifying moment, because I'm always looking for something that, hey, there's something we should be able to agree on.
Mm-hmm.
This is China flexing their muscle. This should be where we go as a country. China is a real threat. How do we deal with it? I mean, we just saw the CIA director come out, yesterday and say that they expect, China to invade Taiwan by 2027. They're expecting them to be much more muscular. For me, this should be that mass mobilization of getting onto war footing, reshore manufacturing, start, clawing back some stuff, shut off the TikToks. There should be some unifying stuff to this, don't you think?
Oh, I would imagine. I mean, it should be a unifier.
But I look at this and see, this is to me, Bob, this was a trial balloon in more ways than one.
In one.
This is a trial balloon. Yeah, let's see how they react. But how do the American people react? And again, predictably, depending on which hat you bought, you're defending either extreme. Shoot it down or don't shoot it down. I'm like, my gut reaction is shoot it down, but then there's a whole bunch that goes into it. For me, there's a whole lot that goes into that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And the Chinese flexing their muscles at us on our own turf. I mean, here they're causing all this excitement of this thing floating around heading eastward. That's just the Chinese way. Yeah.
My favorite response, somebody emailed me and said that, if they lived out in Montana, they'd shoot it down themselves. I'm going, I don't think your pea shooter is going to get to 10,000 feet.
Right.
Sorry. Your AR-15, your AR aren't going to make it that far.
Right.
But go ahead, shoot up. Make sure you stand under it when it comes down.
Sure. I mean, the White House is technically right, and the military's right. You can't shoot it down. It's the size of three buses, 3 school buses. This isn't a tiny little balloon. It's the size of 3 school buses.
Let me ask the dumb question. How did we find out?
How did we find out?
I mean, you could have just stuck to it's a weather balloon and left it at that. Why did we have to come out and make a statement that it's a Chinese spy craft?
I think because we knew, and we knew with the type of technology it has that we can almost see inside of it. We have technology.
No, I get our military knows that. I get that.
Right.
Why is this a story? Because you're somebody who knows probably more than the average person on this stuff. This stuff happens. The Russians have been doing this stuff for years too, no?
Right.
So, it doesn't become a, I don't know. This has been going on for decades, and it never, I don't know, has it ever become this kind of thing before?
This has happened before. It's happened under other administrations where it's happened, and it just wasn't picked up. This happens to be the era of the Chinese, tense negotiations between our countries, the Chinese and North Korea and the Chinese siding with Russia. So I think it's just hyped to the level that, when this happened 10 years ago and 15 and 20 years ago, it just wasn't to the hype level. It's like members of Congress at one point in time, They loved the Chinese trade deals. They love permanent trade status for China. They bragged about it, Meanwhile, we were fighting them on it. Now you've got more people a lot of people that were for Chinese free trade deals aren't even opening their mouth right now to defend China, obviously. So it's just the hype level. It's our times.
Yeah.
The times of our country.
We didn't have social media back then. I mean, the social media feeding frenzy on all of this that has just ramped up the stupid.
Rick, I haven't had so many questions pouring into my messenger and email as in the last 2 days about this balloon. It's just people they're I don't know, fascinated by it, scared by it, I don't know, intimidated or angry, something.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it and my mind went to the place of going, yeah, and? Do you not think that they're spying on us at every opportunity? Do you not think that their satellites in outer space can do exactly what that balloon, probably what the satellites could probably do better?
And do we not think that we do it? I mean, of course, we're the good guys.
Exactly. But, if we shoot this down, you know tit for tat, it's going to happen. And then you now have escalation. And this is where I think, I think Biden has made the right choice. I'd have shot it down.
Right.
Because I'm that kind of reactionary.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta imagine the generals were advising him not to as well.
Right. Also, the fallout of it, I think they wanted to see where else it was headed to.
Yeah.
I don't think it can gather that much information.
Is it curious that it broke today? I mean, that today was the big day, especially with the jobs numbers that came out. That 517,000 jobs in January. That's impressive. Normally, you lose jobs in January after the Christmas holiday.
I think the timing of it. I think the military's known about this. They knew it would eventually get out, so they wanted to, expose it before it, leaked out. And then there would be all the questions: why didn't the White House tell us? Why were they holding back? But its timing did come at the announcement of the jobs. Although I really don't care whatsoever for Fed Chair Jerome Powell, where they talk about the quote risks lying ahead. And one of the risks, they say, is wage growth.
Yep.
Which they say, the Fed, is rising at a pace still too swift for the Fed comfort. And I thought, well, why don't they cut their own pay and see how they like it?
And that was my response, too. When Marsha Blackburn put out, we need to cut spending. I go, well, we can start by cutting your salary. That'd be a good place to start. Let's go there.
The average hourly earnings rose 0.3%. or 4.4% over the previous year. And the Fed's worried that that's rapid wage growth. I was just shocked at some of their thinking. The job announcement was good news, no question about it, especially in light of all these layoffs we've been hearing about this week with, Amazon and Facebook, et cetera, with the tech companies.
Yeah, it's crazy. Last line of questioning I wanted to get into, Tuesday, the big speech. Any thoughts on what the president will focus on? Any ideas of where you would focus if you were given the speech?
If I was given the speech, I would focus on the economy. Absolutely. Have to focus on the economy. I would throw it out there about the debt ceiling. I would mention it. I would mention the debt ceiling, and also budget deficits that willing to work and talk and be constructive on that. So I think they've got to address that. And again, the economy, the pandemic, where it stands in the eyes of the White House. I hate to kind of see the Bush. I never thought I would forget this when we waved the flag and said we won.
Yeah.
That moment.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. I don't think. I think the White House needs to be careful that it's done. Quote. It's going to be around, but it's not particularly what it was. I think they'll mention that, and I would assume, and I would mention, I would confront the issue of immigration.
Really?
Yeah, because I'll tell you why. I would challenge the Congress to come up with an immigration bill. They like to complain about the White House. They complained about Bush. They complained about, well, people, depends where you stood. You complained about, they complained about Trump and Obama, et cetera. And I would just say, look, need to put together a bipartisan immigration bill. And I would throw it back at them.
Do you see a bipartisan immigration bill as anywhere possibly close to reality?
Oh, no. But that's what I'd throw at them anyway. Oh no, it's with this group, no way. It's not. Well, if I don't know if there was a consensus and you had about 20 or so Republicans, but then they would get blocked by the Rules Committee, not allowing the bill to go to the floor. But I would still throw the issue out there if I was the president.
Yeah, I see. I'm of the mindset. Some of that manufacturing jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs in the last 2 years have come back. The fact that they're reinvesting in infrastructure, the tunnels in New York and Baltimore that they just had events around. I think that's all good stuff.
Yeah, he has to hit on the economy. Now he's. I know it's a balloon, but he's going to have to mention something about China and negotiations. Not the balloon, but what we're doing with China, and he's kept the tariffs. I mean, there's got to be some mention of that, I think. But it's got to be a good economic speech. It has to be.
Any national calls to action? Anything? Calls. I'm sure there's going to be some calls for unity.
Well, I think one of the things the president will address. I know he's been criticized by some within the Democratic Party about his position on police, but I think he will have I think you'll see a national call by the president to, look at the system, make the system work better. I think you're going to see something of that nature from the president. I really do when it comes to police.
Any shenanigans you see on the horizon? They've got the governor of Arkansas going to give the Republican response, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Any thoughts there?
Well, I mean, that's the standard thing. I did one when Clinton was president. That's kind of the standard thing. They pick somebody. They're picking her because she's a Huckabee. She was the press secretary, and because she's been elected governor and she's female and in Arkansas. So they're going to pick her. None of these counter speeches I've ever felt were ones that you just stick in your mind, except Rubio when he drank 900 glasses of water. That one stuck in my mind. So I don't think these are necessarily, the big picture items with the response whatsoever. For political reasons, they'll pick people that they want to highlight.
So for the bingo card, who's going to make the biggest fool of themselves in the well, screaming out something?
That's the one thing I wanted to mention. Of course, there's a bit of nervousness in the House right now. I talked to some people up on the Hill today. There's nervousness because, during the State of the Union, when I was in charge of security of the Capitol for the House side, we did extensive planning. It was the biggest security night of the year because the whole government's in there, et cetera. Now there's questions raised about the security and safety. That never happened in the 11 years I was there. It just didn't happen. But due to circumstances now, and some members talking about guns, and now there's no magtometers, and after January the 6th, there's an uneasiness. So we'll see how that goes. That has to go perfect. I would assume that McCarthy, as Speaker, will plead with his people to not do any, you're a liar or anything of that nature. I would assume he's going to plead with them. Does it work? I don't know.
All right.
But he's smart enough to know he doesn't want some kind of, outrageous incident to happen.
All right. Well, we're going to see, and we'll see if they all wear their AR-15 pins that Andrew Clyde's been handing out.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with that. I mean, if anything, I'd start a button thing about inflation or something of that nature versus AR. I mean, I don't think that's the most popular thing right now.
There you go. It's all about rubbing their nose in it. But Bob, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Yeah, I'm waiting to see what kind of shenanigans comes out of it. Going to be very interesting. Going to take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. During the past year, there have been many stories of students walking out of public schools to protest the practices of community policing. This tactic has deep roots in the civil rights movement. On this day in labor history, the year was 1964, which saw nearly 500,000 African American and Puerto Rican students in New York City participating in a one-day school boycott. In addition to nearly half of the public school student population taking to the streets, thousands of demonstrators staged peaceful rallies across the city, gathering at the Board of Education, City Hall, and Governor Nelson Rockefeller's Manhattan office. The purpose of the boycott was to protest segregation and the poor conditions of many schools in black neighborhoods. Bayard Rustin, one of the main architects of the 1963 March on Washington, helped local parents and community groups plan the highly successful event. The massive action drew attention from the national media. The boycott's coordinators approached the United Federation of Teachers, the city's teachers' union, for an endorsement of the action. The union, however, declined, although many teachers did individually support the effort. Despite the success of the action, the school board remained unwilling to change its policies. After the 1964 boycotts did not bring about the change that they had hoped, Rustin and many of the local black organizers of the protest went their different ways. Rustin closely aligned himself with the UFT. He hoped to use the union's power to build a labor civil rights coalition to effect change. Other members of the boycott coalition turned to black community power. They advocated for black community control of local schools. These different tactics resulted in lingering tensions between black activists and the teachers' union that would help to shape New York's politics for the decades that followed. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So, hey, we're making domestic violence great again. Today is the day where wife beaters and abusers, they've won. Evidently, a federal appeals court ruled that the government cannot stop a wife beater, someone convicted of domestic violence, and have restraining orders against them, can't stop them from owning guns. What kind of moronic, idiotic decision is that? What kind of doofus who would do that? Oh yeah, an abuser. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me, some of the laws and the justifications. It's incredible to me. But I got the right. Seriously, when you stop and you look at this, some of the things that are going on in this country are just defy logic. All so that the loudest, most outrageous behavior is protected. And I know, but Rick, that's what the Constitution is supposed to do. To a degree. I think if you dug up the founders and you figured out how to breathe life back into them, I think even they would go, well, that Second Amendment, yeah, we agree. Yeah, rights should not be infringed until you're talking about wife beaters and people who are going to use firearms in abuse. I'm hoping someday before I expire that sanity will be restored. It's curious to me. But yeah, so we'll see where this goes. I'm assuming that it may end up back before the Supreme Court. Maybe. And I'm going to guess that it will be a 6-3 decision because, again, we've got a crazy Supreme Court. And that is where we'll go. This weekend, we're going to come out with the long-form podcast, the Not Ready for FCC Terrestrial Radio podcast. Make sure you take a look for that. We're going to be talking about the State of the Union address with our all-star panel. So Sunday that will be out. So make sure you take a look at that. You can get the podcast at thericksmithshow.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.